If you're a guy in your 30s and you're trying to lose the belly and the love handles, the barbell squat is an excellent weapon in your armory. Today, I'm going to show you how to do it safely and effectively so that you get strong, lean, and energized. Let's go. First things first, as a prerequisite, you need to be able to do a goblet squat. So make sure that you've seen the video on that one and that you can perform that confidently and effectively. Now, in terms of footwear, that's really important, and the thing I'm going to cover first, you really need to be ensuring that you're wearing some kind of rigid shoe that's going to help you to produce as much force as possible when you are doing your barbell squats. So we don't want to be wearing any kind of running shoe or training shoe just because it's got this big bouncy cushion and that doesn't allow you to push firmly against the floor. So as you can see today, my shoe of choice is the Converse, but lifting shoes are also going to be fantastic, some kind of Metcon shoe as well, very popular, but my shoe of choice is usually Vans or Converse. So the first thing that we are going to go through is the setup, and I'm just going to show you on the bar here now. Now what I want you to ensure is that the barbell itself, is around about collarbone height, okay? So when I walk up to it, it should be at the collarbone. If it's obviously higher than my shoulders, you're not going to be able to get it in the traps. If it's too low, you're going to start from too low a position and expend too much energy when you come out, and also it's going to be very hard to re-rack. So it needs to be at this height so that you can re-rack effectively and that you can get up with minimal energy. Okay, so I'm going to show you two positions where we're going to be resting the bar in our back. The first one is going to be the high bar position, and that refers to the bar basically being higher up in your trap. So let me show you what that looks like. So for the high bar, usually my hand placement is a little bit narrower. I'm going to pull it right into the traps nice and hard, like so. So it's resting in the fleshy part of my traps, keeping my chest up, and then I pull it down, and then that is the high bar position right there. Low bar position is going lower into your traps, so below the traps, more into the ridge of your shoulder blades. So to show you what that looks like, for this I actually change my hand position. This is how I usually squat as well, and then I'm going to duck down. If I start in high bar, I'm going to roll it down until it comes into this nice kind of a ridge. You'll feel that naturally, okay? And then this is low bar position. So you've got high bar squat and low bar squat. So the difference between the two, for a high bar squat, that's going to be slightly more knee dominant and your back's going to be slightly more upright when you do this, and that means you're going to be targeting the quads just a little bit more. For the low bar squat, you're going to be more hip dominant, so that means that your torso is going to angle forward slightly further, and you're going to be driving the hips back a lot more as well, and that means that you're just going to be loading the glutes more. Typically, people can squat more when they do the low bar squat, and it's the low bar squat that I prefer to do, and that's what I'll be showing you for the rest of this video. So the next thing we should cover is hand position and where you should put your hands. You want to put your hands as wide as you can comfortably get them. So what I'm going to do for the high bar position, typically I can get my hands a lot narrower, and you'll probably find this as well. So high bar, I'm in position. Okay, I can bring my hands pretty narrow on the high bar position, and you want to drive your elbows forward. So just looking at hand position, that's where I want to be. Typically, I go thumbs under. Okay, so they're wrapping under, but you might want to go thumbs over as well, just to exaggerate the fact that you're kind of wedging the bar into position rather than just, you know, lamely holding it there. This needs to be in a strong position, and typically if I have my thumbs over, I'm really emphasizing the fact that I'm wedging the bar into position, okay? Now in terms of when it comes to low bar position, because the bar is now traveling lower down your back, typically you would go a bit wider, and that's definitely what I do as well. So low bar, I always start with my thumbs over the top, and I know already, because this is how I squat, that I typically need to go wider. So I'm in a nice, as you can see, I'm nice and wide. Now some people, if you've got great shoulder mobility, you might be able to get your hands really, really close. Some people can do that. That's fantastic. But if you can't, honestly, I don't think it matters that much. It's not going to stop you from squatting heavily. The thing that's most important is that you feel comfortable when you are in position. So this is my hand position. It's a bit wider, but I still keep my elbows down, and that allows me to drive my chest up. So the next thing that we want to cover is what are your wrists and your elbows doing. So you want your wrists and elbows to be as strong, in as strong a position as possible to help you to support the bar. So typically, you just want this nice straight line. You don't want the barbell to be in this cocked position here. As you can see, nice and straight, no matter what grip I'm going for. In terms of grip, I would say just get into the habit of going thumbs over, because then you're emphasizing the fact that you're wedging the bar into position. And that's really important for when you are doing all parts of the squat. So the descent, the ascent, it's important that you're focusing on just wedging that bar into position. So I'll go thumbs over, okay? And then in terms of elbows, you don't really want your elbows flaring back so much. You want to kind of drive them under. That's going to help just keep that bar in a nice, solid, supported position as much as possible. Again, there's going to be some kind of like mobility restrictions with some people. If it is purely mobility, then you need to do some extra work just to bring them down. But if it's just your skeleton, don't worry about it. Just get into a position where you can just get your elbows under as much as possible. Now, typically with a high bar, you'll be able to get them all the way under, okay? So that shouldn't be too hard. But for the high bar, if I get into high bar now, some people flare out a little bit, okay? If you can get them all the way in and you feel strong in that position, fantastic. But if they flare back just a little bit away from the body, that's absolutely fine. What we don't want is, kind of this position. So again, lots of anatomical differences are going to account for this, and lots of mobility differences are going to account for this too. So find the position that works for you, but focus on the fact that you should be keeping your wrist straight and your elbows down as far as possible. So next we've got the walkout, super important part of the squat. If you are a novice in the gym and you've not kind of learned how to squat, typically you're just going to walk up to the bar. You're not really going to think about all those points that I just mentioned. You're going to stand up and you're just going to walk back, okay? You're not ready to squat heavy with that. So what we're going to do, I'm going to get into position, and the objective is to expend as little energy as possible and to be able to walk back into a nice, strong position, ready to squat. So I'm going low bar. Hands are on the bar. Now, typically what I do is I hinge back until my eyes are level with the bar. Then you want to pull yourself into low bar or high bar, but for me, low bar position. So here I am. Now, the next thing, foot placement. So just take a look at my feet. At this point, I want to bring one foot under and the other foot under. And then I'm driving the knees out and I'm driving the chest up, okay? So knees out, chest up, and I'm in a super strong position here. Then I am going to brace. So you should know how to brace. So then I stand up by thrusting the hips, okay? I'm not lifting the bar off with my hands, I'm thrusting the hips. So, okay? And the bar's in a strong position. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to take a small step back, step, step, and then I'm going to get into my stance, which is I have one foot turned out slightly, my right foot, and my left foot turned out a little bit less, okay? In that position, I am now ready to squat, so I'm just going to brace, and then I will squat, which I'll cover in a second. But that's how you should be walking out, okay? So in the goblet squat video, we covered what your stance should be looking like, but basically, you want to be in a position where you feel comfortable and comfortable to get as deep as you can. So that's going to look different for completely everybody. We've all got different femur lengths, we've all got different angles of our hips, etc. And typically, these are things that we can't actually correct. Sure, we can do some mobility work, but if you are asymmetrical, that's because your skeleton's asymmetrical. So rather than fight that, you should be able to just be aware of your asymmetries, and that's not going to stop you from squatting heavy. So I've got a bizarrely asymmetrical stance, but I'm able to squat around about 2.4 times my body weight at the moment. And at no point in training to get to that point with very heavy loads has that ever been an issue for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what my stance is, but the main thing is comfort and how well you're able to achieve depth with that. And that's basically it, guys. So let's go into this. So I'm just going to quickly go through my setup again. Then I'm going to show you my stance. So hands on, hinge back. Okay, I'm in position, so feet under, knees out, chest up, brace, explode, walk out, da, da. Now, come and have a look at my feet. So you'll see, I'm aware that my hips are asymmetrical, and in order for me to get depth, my right foot has to turn out a lot more, okay? But what I'm gonna do at this point is, I mean, this is just basically what I wanna show you. So what I wanna explain here, guys, is it doesn't matter if your position is asymmetrical, symmetrical, it just matters what's comfortable and comfortable enough for you to get deep into position. So that's the main thing that I want you to focus on with your stance. Don't overthink it, just get into a position where you are able to be comfortable and able to squat comfortably. So at this point we are now ready to squat. So what I want to cover is essentially the speed of the squat and the depth. You want to go down whilst keeping as much control in the movement as possible. So that typically means that you want to create some tension. You don't want to really, and especially if you're like a beginner, you don't just want to drop it like it's hot and bounce up. You want to really feel everything that should be happening. So knees driving out, keeping the chest up, pushing the hips back, getting as low as you can, and then driving up out of that movement. So let me just go through just the descent, because the loading part of the movement is very important and typically the one that we want to get right first. So I'm going to put my hands on the bar, hinge back, looking at the bar. I'm in position for low bar already. Feet under the bar, knees out, chest up, brace. Get into my weird stance, but for you might be a lot more symmetrical. Then you're going to take a nice deep breath into brace again. And now, for the descent, I'm focusing on driving the hips back and the knees out. And in terms of depth, I'm trying to get the hips below the knees. Okay, that's basically all we're going for. And I'm keeping tension on the way down, and I'm pulling the bar right into my traps. So let me just do all of that now. Okay, so that was obviously the ascent as well, but what I want to get over to you guys there is that in the descent, we're bracing, we're driving the hips back, we're driving the knees out, and we're getting the hips below the knees. Once you're in that position, you're ready to ascend, and that's something that I'm going to go through now. So the penultimate part of the squat is the ascent. So what we're focusing on here is obviously getting up out of the hole so that we can fully contract the glutes. Okay, we've loaded the glutes, now we're going to contract them. Now, as you've probably gathered from everything that we've talked about so far, lots of muscles are actually involved in the squat. Not just the glutes, not just the quads, hamstrings isometrically tense, but also the upper body is involved because we need to keep the upper body as rigid as possible. And that's very much the case during the ascent as well. So when we're thinking about the ascent, rather than just think stand up, what I want you to think is you want to keep the bar wedged into the traps and just focus on driving the traps into the bar. That's what's going to help you stand up as efficiently as possible. If you drive the traps into the bar, the movement's going to be sequenced a lot better. You're not going to have a situation where your hips are going first and then you're kind of doing that. That's a disaster. And you're not going to be, you know, maybe just leaning back too much. I mean, that's a lot less common. But what we want to ensure is that you are coming up with all the joints moving together at the same time so that the squat is nice and even, all right? So simply, when you are at the bottom of the squat, and I'm going to demonstrate this now, when you're at the bottom, just focus on driving the traps into the bar. Now, one more thing that I'll bring in here as well is where should you be looking? Typically, just pick a spot where you're comfortable looking. You don't want to, some people look up, but I would recommend that you kind of just look down towards, I mean, for me, if we just look here, I'm looking down towards this brown part here, okay? But I typically pick a spot and that's where I'm going through. And then the other thing that I'm thinking of in the ascent as well, push hard into my feet. So not only am I driving the bar into the ceiling with my traps, but I'm also thinking feet super tight, they're full control of the ground. Again, that's why you want to be wearing some kind of shoe that's slightly more rigid. So let me just go through that now. Okay, I'm going to talk through this, so I can't hold the brace whilst I'm talking, but you're going to brace, then you're going to drive the knees out, the hips back. Torso leans forward slightly to keep the bar over the feet, and then from here, I'm thinking drive the bar up, traps into the bar, thrust the hips, lock out. And that's how you perform your barbell squats, okay? And also, let me just do that again. Keeping tension on the way down, leaning forward slightly. I feel the glutes fully locked. I feel the glutes fully loaded. From here, push into the feet, drive the bar up, explode, okay? You should be thinking about doing that no matter if the weight on the bar is super light or super heavy. You want to be thinking about those things in every single squat that you do. Now the very last piece of the puzzle is the re-rack. A lot of people get this part wrong in particular. So again, it's important that before you perform your squat, it's always at the right height. That's an important part. So we just want to walk forwards until the barbell hits the upright. Now typically, I mean, it's fine to just keep looking straight ahead, but walk, walk, walk. Now once it hits the uprights, then you just drive the hips back and then you walk away safely, okay? Now, that might seem like common sense, but a lot of people, because there's these little lips here, a lot of people tend to do this. And this is a disaster, especially if you've got a heavy weight on there. They try to loop one side on, loop the other side on, bang, you're down, all right? You don't want to be doing that. So that's what we're trying to avoid. So walk in firmly. Yes, it's hit the uprights, and then hinge back, down. And there you have it, guys. So that's the definitive guide to how you should be approaching your barbell squats. So hopefully that's given you some insights so that you know how to perform that safely and effectively. I'll see you in the next video.